to control the currency in that kind of way. And then there are certain structural problems within the Turkish economy itself, which also contribute to inflation. There's lots of things playing out here, but I would say this: a government like Erdogan's could have brought this situation under some sort of control. I mean, we shouldn't be looking at 70% or 100% inflation in Turkey. A more conventional economic policy would have avoided this. It is, in my opinion, something which Erdogan has himself created.
Rich says Poland, with its leadership history, is a reason the Russian army comes for a visit every 60, 70 years.
Oh dear. I can see that.
I'm not going to comment on that. I know a lot of Polish people, so I'm not going to comment.
And so do I. And they're very good friends. And by the way, I should add, not a Russophobic bone amongst them.
Lee B says, imagine there really is a global cabal conspiracy agenda. Do you think Putin is fighting against it or for it?
Well, he's fighting against it. I mean, again, we come across this question many times, but I cannot believe that Putin has such a fanatical personality that he would be supporting an agenda of this kind, which would lead to the kind of attacks and criticisms of him that are regularly made, with the threats to haul him up before a war crimes trial. I mean, he just doesn't come across to me as that kind of a person at all.
No, what strikes me about Putin is, I heard this about some French politician, that he is a cynic about everything except the Russian nation.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that Putin is a nationalist.
Yes.
I do not believe he is an ethnic nationalist, an ethno-nationalist. No. But he is certainly a nationalist, a Russian, and very proudly Russian. And like I said, I think that he is a cynic about everybody and everything, but he has not an idealized vision of Russia, but certainly a goal as to what kind of nation he wants to leave behind. I think, too, something that people don't quite seem to understand is that, judo fighter that he has always understood when it is smart to go along to get along and when to make a move against a particular group or a particular person that he can take on finally. Okay. Like, for instance, with the oligarchs. In early on in his administration, he made it clear to the oligarchs, look, if you don't get involved in politics and you just stick to making money, I'll leave you alone. You leave me alone, you stay in your lane, and I'll stay in my lane. And the only oligarchs who suffered were the ones who didn't stay in their lane, and they paid for it, and either by exile or imprisonment. The others, they realized, it's not worth it, but we can still make money. But what was interesting is that over the decades, most of those old oligarchs are gone. And they've been replaced by others, and a lot more. Each of these oligarchs with less power than the previous wave of oligarchs, which is very interesting of how he is handling that particular problem. And I'm just focusing on the oligarch issue just to sort of like show you that, or buttress the argument that Putin looks at things long term. He understands that his position is rock solid, that he will be the president or the actual leader of Russia until the day he dies. And at this stage, he is clearly not interested in, they keep saying that, he has mansions and yachts. He doesn't care about that. That's not his priority. He doesn't care about being invited to the cool parties in the Mediterranean or in the, in Mallorca or wherever. He's interested in history. He wants to cement his position with the great leaders of Russia. That's his priority. And so you have to understand the man and where he's coming from and what are his priorities and desires. It seems very clear because he keeps telling people what he wants. The weird thing is that the rest of the world doesn't seem to pay attention to his words. They keep projecting onto him their own desires as opposed to listening to what he says that he desires, which is, of course, important.
Liam, thank you for that super chat. Toilet Sauce says there are unconfirmed reports circulating right now that 16,000 Ukrainian troops may already be encircled near Severodonetsk.
Yeah, I've heard the same. I mean, I've heard a lower number than that, 8,000, but that might have been purely Severodonetsk itself, and it could be that the entire pocket or cauldron or trap, or call it whatever you like, is bigger.
Tony, thank you for joining the Durant community. Nicola, thank you for that super chat. Elena Diaz says, so if Sweden and Finland are not accepted to NATO, they would have forfeited neutrality for nothing. Correct.
Absolutely. And as I said, Erdogan's comments today have been exceptionally strong. I mean, if you take them at their face, he's going to vote against NATO membership in June. I don't expect that to happen. But if it does, it's a disaster for the governments of those two countries.
RDDR says, is there a contradiction in turning a Soviet republic into a European nation state?
Well,
They did
not
with
necessarily. You could do it with the Baltics. I mean, some of these Soviet republics are genuine nation states. Armenia, Georgia, these are nation states. So, I mean, I can't say that all of them are not nation states, but there are others where, it's a lot more complicated. And I'm afraid Ukraine is arguably the most complicated of the lot.
Yoro Gabor says, how will Germany pay for the great social engineering into diversity as our strength if the politicians will cripple their industry? More money printing. The EU will be gone in a decade. Orban smiles.
I think you're quite possibly completely right. I mean, but ideologues never worry about these things. I mean, they're confident that the solution will come. I mean, if you believe Robert Habeck, all you have to do is build windmills, and all will be well.
Rinex Tag says,
everything is better.
Rinex Tag says, wasn't 2008 Georgia War something connected to Ukraine?
I think it was, because what happened was in 2008, there was that NATO meeting in Budapest, and the NATO said that one day Georgia and Ukraine would become members of NATO. There's actually an official statement to that effect, but not just yet. And one of the reasons was that there were these issues in Georgia's case about these territories that were not under Georgian control. So Saakashvili, who was the president of Georgia and was very, very keen to get Georgia into NATO, he started the war in 2008 because he thought that if he could gain control of South Ossetia and ultimately Abkhazia, that would open his way to join NATO. And so you can see that this offer to Georgia, this invitation ultimately to Georgia and Ukraine, which was made at the same time, at the same summit meeting, to join NATO, is the source of all this trouble.
Carol Jones says, the U.S. general could have been confused with the Canadian general. Now in Moscow, we Canadians are always confused with Americans internationally.
We have to wait.
We'll have to wait. Let's wait and see. I mean, what exactly?
Sparky says Ukraine would be much better off under Russia than under carpetbaggers and NAZIs, as it's been for the last 30 years.
Well, possibly, but it could have. I still believe this. If it had run its affairs well and had been left alone, who knows? It might have done very well by itself. It has all the resources, but that never happened. And of course, there's no going back.
Matlis X says, looks like Turkey is walking a tightrope between Russia and NATO, but what is Kazakhstan doing? Seems like Russia intervened in their coup attempt in January, yet Erdogan is also courting them.
Indeed, he is. And he's now made a deal to start drone production in Kazakhstan, or so I understand. But Tokayev, the Kazakh president, has just been in Moscow again, where he's attended a CSTO summit, and it looks as if they're edging towards setting up a joint military headquarters. This is all the CSTO states. So, military integration, but Erdogan is still playing his complicated games in Central Asia, and the Kazakhs appear to be drawing him along.
Yeah, but I also, if I were Erdogan, I'd be very, very nervous, because it was clear that he had some fingerprints over the Kazakhstan color revolution that didn't quite happen. And from what I understand, it really freaked out the Chinese. and because they didn't want to have that particular problem right on their doorstep. And so I think that, and they blame Erdogan. I think that Erdogan has created some very powerful enemies. I think that the Russians and Putin understand that Erdogan likes to play his games, sort of like playing both sides off the middle. But I don't think that the Chinese really are of the understanding nature, if you will, insofar as what Erdogan did. And I think that there will be payback. And I think that it's going to be really, they're going to hit him when he's at his weakest, which is what the Chinese usually do.
Yeah. Jamie99 says, is this like Lord of the Flies playing out on a global scale?
Kind of.
Oh, gosh.
Well said.
I hope not. Well said, yeah.
And who's Piggy? That's the question. Is Boris Johnson Piggy or what?
Well, Boris Johnson. That's true. Boris Johnson. Bruno, thank you for that super sticker. Balke says the U.S. is currently not fighting on any fronts. Very true. Thank you for that. Matlis says Serbia and Hungary are two neighboring landlocked countries. How can they have any hope of maintaining Russian energy supplies without Hungary crossing into Western Ukraine and Russia moving further west?
Well, at the moment, there has been, they're still getting their energy through these pipelines built by the Soviet Union, by the way. But of course, if they're interrupted, then Hungary and Serbia are going to be in very difficult positions. And that may actually make them make some important political decisions going forward that they probably don't want to make at the moment. In other words, they might have to sort of speak to Moscow and see whether they can coordinate something in Ukraine. But we'll see. We're not there yet. Let's wait and see.
Kurt says NATO is incredibly weak in the Arctic. The drills they had resulted in frozen equipment. Russian equipment has coating which prevents freezing.
Absolutely. That is completely true. There's been much discussion about this. The Russians at the moment have an overwhelming advantage in the Arctic. But of course, things can change. We'll see.
Alan says, any comments on the U.S. invading Somalia?
Oh, yeah, I heard about that. That just happened. I don't know enough to know, number one, why would they bother, and what's to be gained there. So I don't really know. Do you guys?
Well, no, nor do I. And I mean, I'm puzzled by it because I seem to remember that when they were last in Somalia, it didn't end very well. I mean, was it the helicopter that got shot down? And there was even a film about it.
Yeah.
Or
Toilet Sauce says, did anyone notice no more pictures of long cash queues in the metro? It's almost as if people simply downloaded domestic digital payment alternatives and went on with life the same evening. But never forget, Russia doesn't make anything. That's a good point.
True.
Very true. And McDonald's is leaving Russia as well. And you're going to have a new restaurant chain. Reach says the best example is the Soviet Union after all the casualties combined in World War II, Russian Civil War, and World War I, which became the superpower, and its casualties are off the scale, almost equal to 45 million.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as I said, it's a fallacy that long wars make countries weaker. It depends on the terms of the victory. I mean, I just say this, but provided victory is achieved, long wars often make countries stronger.
Because what happens is that it's not a straight economic issue. It's an issue of the mentality of the people, the confidence that a clear victory, a clear military victory instills in the people. That they walk simply with head held high. They feel we're winners, and it's economists often talk about the animal spirits. Well, here we go. This is an issue where you can have a completely annihilated, physically annihilated country and yet feel incredibly confident about the future because you are the victor in a prolonged war, which is exactly what happened to the Soviet Union at the end of the Second World War. The Soviet Union was destroyed, and yet it felt confident and moved forward confidently. I think that Russia will be pretty much the same at the end of this conflict. Yes.
GEC812 says Saakashvili, a U.S. deep state puppet. We can blame him for the Russian intervention in Georgia. He would do little without okay from his handlers.
Oh yeah, I agree with that.
Specifically,
Too.
John McCain. Exactly.
I agree with that too.
Yeah, his mentor was McCain. Lee B says, do you think with all that's going on, evil is a real idea?
Evil is a real idea. Evil is a reality. I mean, I've encountered it. I mean, I've said in a previous program, I think, that I used to have to go. One of the jobs I used to have was to go to and meet people in the cells underneath the Royal Courts of Justice in London, and I encountered some very evil things and people there. So the evil is a reality. But when we discuss these issues like Ukraine, we mustn't put aside these things, but we must also, I think, take a very practical approach to them also, and maybe not be too influenced by these big existential moral questions as well.
Jungle Jin says, why not just ban the ruble? Is this possible?
They have.
Well, they have, to all intents and purposes. Try. If you've got rubles, if you're holding rubles in London, try and change them. You can't.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, in terms of investing, I know a number of investors with a lot of access to a lot of funds. I mean, a great deal, quite frankly, who are finding it incredibly difficult to get into the ruble, and they want to. They want to get into ruble assets. But it's just so complicated because since the West divorced itself from the ruble, at this time, it seems that a lot of Westerners, what they are basically doing is that they are setting up offshore businesses, opening Chinese accounts, and from these Chinese accounts, trying to hook up with the Russian accounts and be able to invest that way. But it's a very complicated, convoluted way to invest. And these are motivated investors, and they're having a hard time. So for the average retail investor, forget it. You as a practical matter, you're never going to be able to invest in the ruble or in Russia, which will be to your detriment, unfortunately.
Jungle Jin says Modi and the BJP are theocratic fascists. How does the India-Russia friendship survive this, given India's socialist origins?
Straightforward. It's in their mutual interest. So there may be huge ideological differences, but because it is in the mutual interest of both countries, it's preserved on that basis. And that's always the case with Russian policies. I mean, other countries tend to worry a great deal about, the ideologies and opinions of a particular country. The Russians get on with everybody. They get on with MBS in Saudi Arabia, for example.
Rit says competition is when you have capable manufacturing left, not some service-based economy. Russia and China have solid manufacturing, whereas the U.S. doesn't.
Well, indeed. And by the way, I was actually looking at some of the figures here, and on Russian manufacturing, I mean, I'd assumed that U.S. manufacturing was much greater. It's not. It's not as big a difference as one might think in terms of steel production. It seems almost about the same levels.
Well, then that means that the Russian steel production is this in tons of steel produced per year?
I believe so. Yeah.
Or okay.
Yeah.
No, because if it was in terms of in nominal terms, then if the figures are similar, that means that Russia is at least twice, if not three times as much, because of the famous Big Mac index. You guys know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes. Yes.
So,
but anyway, it's not something I've looked into, to be honest. But I mean, certainly Russia does have an awful lot of manufacturing, and the effect of the sanctions is it's going to have more, because Russian industries are going to emerge to fill in the gaps in the consumer sectors, which have now been vacated.
Sparky says Erdogan's going Erdogan. Erdogan's gone Erdogan. Thank you, Sparky, for that. Noel says
Erdogan. Yeah,
he's done an Erdogan. Noel says, any thoughts on Biden secretly sending U.S. troops to Somalia? War, and more war.
Well,
we're going to have to look into that. Thank you for that super chat, Noel. And Matlis says the U.S. fighting a war on two fronts. Looks like the U.S. is opening up another front in Africa, with Biden sending troops to Somalia and having U.S. aid and humanitarian aid to the northeast of Ethiopia. Very, very true. A lot of stuff happening in Africa. Unfortunately, all bad stuff that's happening.
Yes.
Yeah. Linda, thank you for becoming a new member to the Iran community. Joe Public says, what's your opinion on American exceptionalism?
It's bullshit. To think that you're the exceptional nation, the indispensable nation, what kind of arrogance is this? It's absurd. There is no such thing as an indispensable nation. No, and no nation is exceptional, because exceptionalism, excuse me for ranting, but exceptionalism gives moral license to go and do whatever you want, no matter how morally outrageous it might be, because you're the exceptional nation. I despise this. It is really a despicable notion to think that you are so superior, so exceptional, that you can do whatever you want, invade any country, murder other people, because you're the exceptional nation. I'm sorry. It really, really bothers me, that notion.
I mean, the other thing I would add to that is that, of course, the founders of the United States, the people who drew up the Constitution, they actually warned against that type of thinking. They said that the United States should not engage in thinking in that kind of way. But there we go. It's a profoundly un-American way of thinking if you look at American history.
Yes, exactly right. Exactly right. It's really despicable. It's so arrogant and conceited. I'm not going to go on. Sorry, because I'll rant for 10 hours. So yeah, and you guys only 5.5 at most.
Vadraj says South Africa now has unemployment around 55%. Ooh. And the higher food prices are the match in the powder keg. Disaster seems unavoidable.
Oh dear.
Yep.
Rinnex tag says, for Gonzalo, is the 2008 war in Georgia somewhat connected to Ukraine as a real hope?
I think
I think Gonzalo answered that. Yeah. Thank you for the super chat. Alan B says, any update on the Red Babushka?
Oh, the British they were publishing a story that the Ukrainians have interviewed her, and she came, she was trying to take back what she'd said. I actually read the commentaries in the British media, and it didn't seem to be as if she was taking back anything that she said. But anyway, there we go.
Well, what's happened is that the Ukrainians got to her, and she's an elderly lady, and they convinced her that even though it turns out that the Ukrainians deliberately shelled her house to destroy it, and they told her that it was the Russians who did it, so she would denounce the Russians. And it was just more PR nonsense. And I hope that this poor woman comes out all right from this whole situation, because she's being manipulated. I mean, the original video was clearly organic, and the movement that came out of it in Russia was clearly organic. But now, unfortunately, the Zelensky PR machine has taken it over, and who knows how that'll turn out. My only hope is that the poor lady and her husband make out all right from this whole situation.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Linda, thank you for that super sticker. Harry C. Smith says, I learned dual citizenship is prohibited in Ukraine, but that doesn't stop Zelensky from getting it. Also, Kolomoisky has multiple passports. True.
Kolomoisky, the oligarch, had a famous saying. He said, because he has Ukrainian, Israeli, and Cypriot passports. And he said, yes, it's illegal to have 2 passports, but there's nothing in Ukrainian law that prevents you from having 3.
That's the workaround. Get 3 passports. Herding's Cats says, can someone explain to me why the EU seems to want a weak Germany? Who would profit from that?
Bill, the EU wants weak member states. It wants so that it can centralize power in Brussels. That's very much what they've been trying to achieve all along. So, of course, it wants a weak Germany. It wants a weak everybody.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, of course, it doesn't want a stronger Italy, a stronger Spain to counterbalance strong France and strong Germany. No, everybody has to go down. The typical socialist, communist approach to things, that you don't raise people, you pull them down.
Not intimidated says, great live stream. It's not a war. It's a special military operation on steroids. Thank you very much. Not intimidated for that. John says,
sorry to say something. He's absolutely right, because we have not seen the Russians go to war. This is a special military operation, and absolutely right. When they go to war, it's a completely different animal insofar as the Russians are concerned. And so, yeah, we should be thankful that it is not a war and that it is a special military operation.
Yeah. Zahir, thank you for that super chat. Marsha Plux, welcome to the Durant community. John, keep up the good work. Thank you, John, for that. Olga says, thank you to all three of you to be so brave and objective. I do look forward to your new videos every single day. Thank you, Olga, for that. Mark, thank you for that awesome super chat. Thank you very much, Mark, for that. Jahangir says, America is coward picking small countries. It won't go after both Russia and China. So it will close Ukraine and go after China. But what happens if Russia and China go after the US together?
Well, I don't think that's what they plan to do, actually. I don't think either China or Russia have any plans to attack the United States, because I think from their point of view, they probably feel the time is on their side. But what might happen is we might get into a conflict like we've seen with Ukraine over Taiwan. And that's the real danger for me.
Liam Barrett says, guys, what's your reaction to Scott Ritter's interview with Garland Nixon, where he said Russia will need to step it up or lose in relation to continuing the arms shipments to Ukraine?
I think that Scott should sometimes take some time to consider his opinions, and he should take some time to think through some of the positions that he believes, because sometimes, with more facts emerge, maybe your first knee-jerk reaction is not the accurate one. So I would say that to Scott, to just take a little time and not quite assume something so quickly, which might not be borne out by the facts. I would say that.
We've done a program, not specifically about Scott, but covering the very points some of the points that you made.
It'll be up later today, most likely, or tomorrow. Peter Liu says lockdown hurt China, especially retail and EV sales in April. China developing anti-COOF drugs, mRNA, and Omicron-specific vaccines, building new permanent COOF hospitals and testing sites before replacing zero COOF policy. Otherwise, 1 to 2 million Chinese may die. That's a very big super chat from Peter. Thank you very much for that. So Peter's explaining what's going on in China. Any comments, guys?
No,
so we're gonna have to move on because we have we're pressed on time. Kurt says, but thank you, Peter, for that. Any comments there, Gonzalo?
No, not from me.
Okay. Thank you, Peter, for explaining that. Ryan says, do you think Trudeau is jealous of Zelensky for actually making it as an actor and not doing and not becoming a drama teacher? Love your work in upstate Canadian. Thank you. That's fantastic, Ryan. Thank you for that.
Fantastic.
Kurt, mean, Ryan. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Kurt says, everybody who did not sleep in math class knows that if you have 3 of something, you also have 2. Comment to the dual passport story. Very true. But math is so yesterday, Kurt. G-Dog says, typical communist, what the fuck? This is, sorry, excuse my language. What the F? This is 100% imperial capitalism. Thank you very much for that, G-Dog. Where am I here? Throwing the wild card in. Remember the bushfires last year? How well are we all prepared for that this year?
Probably not at all, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I don't think we're prepared for that. Aji, thank you for that super sticker. Let's see. Ermin, thank you for that super sticker. Tim, thank you for that super sticker. Summer of 1970, thank you for that super chat. New Guardian says Russians bless their weapons.
Every soldier blesses his weapon.
And Gonzalo has done a good piece about Ukrainians being told not to criticize Western weapons.
Right. That was a good video. Yeah,
a very good video.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I like that one. I even referenced it to Gonzalo in a video that I did. I like that one so much. Balkajan says, just watch Putin's 2007 speech in Munich. It is impressive and foretells everything we are seeing today about shared security. That is a fantastic speech. If you can find it on YouTube, definitely find that 2007 speech.
I would suggest you read it, because sometimes with the translation, you don't quite get what he's actually saying. And so I suggest reading it. There are lots of copies floating around, so it's no trouble.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Zariel says, wasn't able to help much, but thank you as always, the Duran FTW. Thank you, Zariel. I don't know what FTW is, but thank you for that, Zariel. Toilet Sauce says, I put
for the win. FTW.
For the win. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry. Toilet Sauce says, I posted a video from a French reporter in Moscow on Locals the other day. He seemed very disappointed by the fact that shops are filled to the brim and life goes on as always.
Yeah. I saw that. That was funny. He was pissed. He was
he was mad.
You could tell in his voice, and there was all this footage of supermarkets in Russia with all these crispy new products, clearly Russian in origin, and they were all neatly arrayed in the supermarket, and he was clearly upset. It was very funny. You have to go and see it. It's
definitely check that on theduran.locals.com. That's where you'll find that video. Sparky says, Hunter S. Lira Gonzalo journalism. Thank you, Sparky. Thank you, Sparky, for that. Journey to the East says, what's your guys' take on the U.S. embarrassed the Asian countries by throwing 150 million and then saying, share it with your brother, just like I throw 50 pence and then say, share it with your brother and use it wisely?
Well,
a penny saved, a penny earned. That's what I have to say.
Yes. Karen says, will the U.S. send nuclear weapons to Ukraine?
No. I think even the US wouldn't do a thing like that, to be honest.
Yeah, and they're not even sending the guidance systems in their howitzers. People have been noticing that the howitzers that the Americans have been sending are lacking the GPS guidance systems.
Yes.
Or firing systems rather.
Yes.
And so
yes, absolutely. Which means that they, as I understand it, that they can't use extended range munitions, which some people have been talking about.
Exactly. Which sort of like makes it sort of like, why did you send it then? What was the point?
Exactly.
Yura Gabor says Hungary and Serbia receive most of their Russian gas via Turk Stream pipeline and not via Ukraine. The soft underbelly of this pipeline is Bulgaria at the moment with the current leadership.
Yes. You're quite right, actually. You're absolutely right.
And let's see. James Edwards says, jokes about people I like having cancer are not funny. Jokes about people I don't like, on the other hand, are hilarious. Thank you, James, for that. David Franco says, this is off topic, but it is surprising how crazy the current thing meme has become. In reality, we've gone from masks to Ukraine to Roe v. Wade to the great replacement in a matter of 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah, the current thing is like real. I mean, look, memes pop up because they are reflecting reality. If they weren't reflecting reality, they wouldn't get the popularity that they do. So you have to look at memes like that. They are debris. No, they are. It's like a thermometer. A thermometer registers a certain temperature because that's the temperature. Same with the meme. The meme appears and is popularized because it is registering the temperature of the zeitgeist. To mix my metaphors, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Sparky says China is also culling pensioners with their lockdowns.
Right. Okay.
Thank you for that, Sparky. And Balke says there's no hippopotamus here in the room. Thank you for that, Sparky. And what else? Let me see if I've got any other. I think that's gosh, I don't know if I've missed one or not. Matthias says, is this Rubicon moment or more like a Suez Crisis moment for the U.S., which officially marked the end of the British Empire?
Well, for it can be both. For Britain, Suez, which remember was a war of choice, was a Rubicon moment. I mean, it was the moment when Britain's imperial power essentially ended, and it became very clear that Britain was, from that point on, a subordinate ally of the United States with no real capacity for independent decision making.
Yeah. Kurt Fram says many comments about why Sweden and Finland joined NATO. Answer: because decision is getting rushed without debate and a referendum.
Absolutely very correct.
Yep. J. James, thank you for that super sticker. Simo Bothell says, how much involvement do you think Henry Kissinger has in U.S. policy?
I don't know. I'm not sure that he does have much, but he's certainly around and he certainly gives advice.
Smug Buddha says, are there any dots to connect between the race gun violence in America and this global war?
Not really, except as a distraction.
Yeah.
Sparky says, like Fox News, Boris has controlled opposition.
Boris Johnson. Oh, absolutely.
Boris Johnson is an imbecile. Good God.
Yeah. Zugzuxi says statistics on government chat, bombs away, sung by the police. The Police, great band. Thank you for that, Zugzuxi. And Elaine says, is the fear of a false flag incriminating Russia receding? If China is now first choice for regime change, will the neocons leave the Europeans to their fate and work on their hatred for China?
I think that the possibility the possibility of a false flag has, at this time, seems to have diminished quite a bit, because I think that there is a realization in the West that it's over, and to stir up some false flag or something like that is not really going to help the cause one way or the other. And so we might as well just give up the ghost and keep our powder dry so that we can refocus on China. I think that is the calculation. Because I again, it's a sense, and also I think that the false flag of that suburb that we dare not name because of YouTube shenanigans, well, that particular incident did not play as decisively as the people wanted it to, and so I think that lesson has been learned. Like, it's not really going to happen, and if we make it bigger, there'll be too many ways for us to be implicated, and so it's just not worth it. I think that's the calculation. What do you guys think?
I suspect you're right, and I would add that incident north of Kiev. The more information we get, the more complicated it looks. So it's not possible to use it in quite that way, and that's been a consistent problem with all these false flag attempts in Ukraine. I'm afraid we are running short of time.
Elena Diaz says communism is an ideology based on just remuneration of work. Thank you for that. Elena and Balke says, correction, I was confused. Is there a rhinoceros in the room is the question. Thank you for that. Okay. All right. Yeah, we are out of time. Gonzalo, Alexander, thank you very much. Thank you to Odyssey. Thank you, Rumble. Thank you, YouTube, and the locals chat. Thank you to our moderators. Thank you so much to our moderators, Valley S, Zarael, GEC812, Reckless Abandon also is in the house. And I think those were our moderators for the day. Thank you very much to the best moderators. Thank you to everyone that sent us questions. Jennifer, thank you for that final super sticker. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for that. And any final thoughts, guys, before we sign off? We have like a minute or two left. Gonzalo, any final thoughts?
No, I'm just happy that my motorcycle battery is charging. Even as I speak to you, it's charging away. And soon I'll be riding my BMW GS 1200 Adventure. Yes.
All right. Good, because there are people in the locals chat asking what kind of bike you have.
I have a couple. I have a Ducati Scrambler that's just run around town kind of a bike. I've got a BMW GS 1200 R1200 GS Adventure, and I have my eye on the next bike. Once this all settles down, I want to get a Ducati Diavol. That's my next bike. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay, nice. Quite a bike actually.
Yeah.
Borkhan says, great show as usual, guys. Love to all. Remember, people, you are the resistance. Stay alive and hope we take our planet back. All right, Alexander, any final, what you have 10 seconds, Alexander, final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's been fascinating to watch a clear-cut Ukrainian defeat spun as a kind of victory. And this has been the story of the war all along, it seems to me. So many more victories like this, and there'll be no Ukraine left.
You're right.
Take care, everybody. Have a great day, and we'll have videos up on all our channels, Gonzalo's, Alexander's, mine, the Duran. See you soon.